Just look how cute it is. Hi everyone, so last week I went over all the different types of freelance editing that are available to you, and this week we're going to go ahead and talk about how to find the right professional editor for you. Disclaimer, you're going to have to do a lot of research. I'm sorry if you don't like research, but you're just going to have to do it. Choosing the right editor for you is very important, so it's not just something that you should trust word of mouth with. You should actually do your own research and find the one that's best for you. The best way to organize all this information is, of course, with a spreadsheet. And there should be no surprise to you that I use colors all over mine because colors are awesome. I would show you guys a view of what my spreadsheet looks like right now, but it's a hot mess. You should expect that to happen. The amount of data that you're going to collect is going to be pretty extensive, and then it doesn't help that some editors call copy editing one thing and different ones will call it a totally different thing, so your notes will kind of get a little jumbled. So your pretty little list might get a little messy. All right, so let's jump right into it. So I'm going to go over the process of choosing an editor, where to find those editors, and then give you guys some little additional tips at the end. So number one, the first thing you should do is to make a list. This is your research phase, and it's going to be by far the longest portion of your entire process. There's just about 1 million different editors out there, so this can kind of be a little daunting. I've already explained how important editing is, so even though this might not be the fun part, stick with it. You don't want to sell yourself short on this. In a minute, I'll go over some sites and some tips to finding an editor, but for now, I'll recommend doing a search of your genre followed by editor and maybe freelance, and you're probably going to get a lot more options than you really want, but you can start narrowing those down and put your favorites into your spreadsheet. So some things that you should look at include their previous works. I go as far as looking these books up on Amazon just to see how they're doing, and then to read an excerpt of each one so that I can see if there's any typos on the first page or any grammatical errors or if some sentences sound weird. So don't pay attention to the writer's voice because that's not something that the editor is supposed to change, but try to make sure you find any obvious mistakes that the editor should have caught. For this particular part, I like to assign the editor a little letter grade, A, B, C, D, F, just so I can kind of keep things a little simple when I'm doing my spreadsheet. Keep in mind, this is not all-inclusive though. Some editors will list out all of the novels they've ever worked on without specifying which type of editing they did on them. So remember from last week, we learned all about the different types of editors, so even if the novel has some typos that you notice and the editor really only did developmental edits, that's not really something that they were supposed to catch all of. So it helps if they list what type of editing they did. In any case, I still like to assign a letter grade. It's also handy to know their following on social media. Some editors may blast to all of their followers all about your book whenever it comes out. It can kind of help you in your marketing efforts, so it's a plus. So in your spreadsheet, you should include the pricing, the types of editing that they do, and the specific names for them, social media accounts, and then any special deals or offers that they may have. Number two in this process is to contact these editors. So now that you've got this huge list of your finalists, these are people that you actually like and that you would really consider working with. So your email should always be professional because after all, you want to develop a working relationship with this person. Make sure there are no crazy typos. Don't use the letter R when you really mean like R-A-R-E. Or don't type the letter U. I mean, you know, Kira, isn't that right? Or any other text-related word versions. She's finding a nest. So first thing you should do is address the person, and if you're not sure what to address, you know, Mr., Mrs., or anything like that, you can always say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and then continue on your email. Rocky's like a businessman, so you should totally listen to what he says. So at the end, you should definitely sign your name, and then include any titles that you may have below that, and then any links that you may want them to check out below that. Your title could be anything like writer or entrepreneur or author, and you could like list the book that you're an author of. You could say writing coach if you actually do writing coach. Don't make things up. Only put it if you actually do it. So mine lists my name, Vivien Reis, with my title underneath, and then finally my website at the very bottom. So here's some things you should address in your email. Number one, tell them what it's all about. This one's a no-brainer. You want to write up a summary for your novel that spans only a few sentences, because in this initial email, they might not even have room to fit you in this year, or they might not work on your genre, or any host of things. So you kind of want to keep this email relatively short. Include your target audience, your genre, and your word count. Usually most of the quotes that you're going to get from editors are based on your word count. Now if you haven't finished your novel yet, you can include an estimate of how many words you think you're going to be at when you finish, and then if your estimate's not completely accurate, by the time your editing date comes, your price will be adjusted. But you should let the editor know exactly what they're getting into in case you choose to use them. Mosquitoes. The second thing you should include is the type of edit that you think you need. This might not always be what you get because depending on your sample edit and how that goes, the editor might suggest some different types of editing, which you don't always have to follow, but if you're confused about what type of edit you need, the editor will definitely tell you. And it's always helpful for them to provide a reason why. In fact, they should always provide a reason why. In the end, it's up to you, but in the first email, let them know what type of edit that you're looking for, and that way they can give you a better quote. The third thing, I already mentioned it, is to request a sample edit. Every editor should offer a sample edit and then list criteria on their website. Some editors prefer the first chapter, some the first 10 pages, some a chapter or 10 pages from the middle of your book, and if they don't specify this, then your first email is a good opportunity to ask what exactly they want for their sample edit. Sample edits usually take about 1 to 2 weeks to get back, so Rocky says get on it. Just kidding. But typically it's best to wait to actually send your sample edit until your second email. So when they respond to you and say, hey, yeah, I'll look at a sample edit, maybe this is when I can do it, they might have more information, go ahead and send it over in the second email that you send them. So make sure you put in your spreadsheet what each editor wants as far as their sample edit goes. So if you ever forget, you have a quick little reference guide to what you need to send to each editor. The fourth thing is their availability. Depending on the particular editor, you might have to wait a little while until they get to your novel. This may work out well for you if you're booking an editor before you've even finished your manuscript, or it might not work at all for you because you want your book published in 3 months. Politely ask them what their editing schedule looks like and when they would be able to squeeze in your novel. So when they get back to you, make sure to include this date in your spreadsheet. Number 5, confirm their preferred communication, both during and after editing. Some editors charge extra for you to speak with them on the phone after they've done all the edits in case you wanted clarification on anything, and some have an open line of communication throughout the entire process. It's best to know ahead of time how available they're going to be, just in case in the future you're confused by one of the comments that they made. Number 6, payment options and or discounts. If this information's not on their website, it's just poor and lazy research if you ask these questions and they are written plainly on their website somewhere. Remember, you wanted to look like a professional here, so don't ask them information that they just have to reiterate because it was already on their website. In any case, some editors charge 20% of the overall cost before editing has ever started when you want to reserve your date. Some want 50% now and then 50% once they start editing. If it's not clearly laid out somewhere, make sure you ask them. Number 7, their portfolio. If this is not on their website, once again, if it's on their website, don't bother asking. You can ask for clarification on the types of editing they did for each novel, but don't ask what they've worked on if it's already there. All right, so that sums up part 2, which is all about the email. All right, so number 3 in this entire process is to assess their responses and then take a look at their editing samples. You might immediately get a feel for which editor you want to use just during this phase. They need to be quick to respond and as professional as you should have been. Look at what comments that each one of them made. Did they give specific examples for why you needed to change what? Sometimes they might point out the same mistakes, but did they give different explanations for them? Is one editor more thorough than the other? Make sure that you rank all of your editors based on this sample edit, and this will help tremendously. Part 4, it's time to decide. Your handy spreadsheet should make this fairly simple, but just in case you're a little confused by it or you're still not sure who to go with, you can narrow them down by looking at the following. I wish I could use letters here because I'm using an awful lot of numbers. Maybe I could do like sign language. Does anybody know that? I don't remember. Number 1, their availability date. Some of us don't want to wait 6 months for an editor. For some of us, that's totally okay. We're planning on publishing it anytime soon anyway. Number 2, cost. This is a really big, important one. This might be the most important one for a lot of people. Prices can range from like $400 to like $8,000 and more, depending on the type of editing you want to go with and how popular and in demand that editor is. Realistically, look at your budget and see what you're comfortable with spending. If you can't stomach the idea of spending more than $3,000 on this, then weed out all of those editors that you know are above $3,000. You shouldn't actually have put them on your list to begin with, but get rid of them now. The third thing to consider is you can always use different editors for different edits. You don't have to do both edits with one editor, you can just split them up. Nothing says that you have to go with one editor or company all the way through. The fourth thing to look at is their experience. Typically, this goes hand in hand with their availability because the more experience they have, Kira's got an itch, the more in demand they're going to be, the higher their cost, etc., etc. So hopefully that narrows things down to just 1 or 2 editors that you have to choose between, and then you might have a difficult choice, but hopefully that helped. All this information may be handy, but it's not if you have no idea where to find these editors. So I have 4 ways that you can find editors. I just love using numbers today. Number 1, word of mouth. This is probably one of your bigger ones if you have a lot of writing friends or if you have a couple writing friends that have used editors. Ask any friend that you have or post something on social media and ask who they worked with, what edit they got from that person, just so you can get a better idea. Number 2, Google. I already talked about it. You can just put freelance editor. You can put your genre, freelance editor, professional editor, Typical Google things. Just go as far into the page count as you can stand or until the websites get a little shady. You know, that happens. Number 3 is the directory from the Editorial Freelancers Association. I have a link down below. Just read through any editor that you're interested in. You can change the criteria and you can find some editors with a lot of experience there. Number 4, Joanna Penn actually has an awesome page on her website that details a bunch of different editors. She has some of the costs listed out already, so you might not have to go to them if it's above your price range, but her link is also down below. There's a bunch of editors on there. I have another list for you guys. Here's some additional things that you need to consider. Number 1, genre. Some editors refuse to look at things like erotica, or maybe they don't like high fantasy. Make sure that your genre is one that the editor is comfortable with editing and they're also experienced editing. Number 2, future works. If you already know that you're going to be doing a series and you really enjoyed working with this person, then maybe you should make sure before the close of it that you can reserve their services for future novels. You never know, they might stop doing developmental edits or proofreading, and this way you can lock in all the rest of your books if you really enjoy editing with them. Number 3, referrals. If you have a friend that's looking for an editor and you refer them, do you get a discount? Maybe they get a discount. Maybe you get a discount if somebody refers you. See if they have any programs like this, because good word of mouth is like God to anybody that's working in an industry like this. Number 4, sample edits of other authors. This is really awesome if they are able to provide this. You can include this in your first email if you want to. This will help you get a better idea of the types of mistakes that they catch or just some general work that needs to be done within the chapter, and it's on something you're not attached to. That's the important thing here. So you can actually read it and you can think, oh yeah, that makes sense, without thinking like, oh no, she's like wounding my baby or something dire like that. The 5th thing that you should consider, and it's a really big one for some people, is trust. Actually, it should be a really big thing for all people. You want to use somebody that you trust, whose opinion that you think actually makes sense. If one just gives you a funny feeling and you're not sure, then listen to your gut. It could save you a big headache down the road when out of nowhere your editor stops talking to you or God knows what. So if you've already tried to look at different editors and you're still not sure who to go with, definitely try making that list. You want somebody that's going to treat your book baby really, really well, and having a summary laid out in the open of each editor is really going to help in that effort. Remember, nothing says that you have to agree with the editor on certain issues. If it's technical and there's a rule for it that your copy editor says that you should do, then you should do it. You always have the final say in what edits happen, and you can just choose to ignore some things if you don't agree with it. But an editor should always give you good, constructive feedback and explanations on why each edit should take place. When all is said and done, when you get your novel back and it's inked up and it's got a ton of suggestions on it, don't panic. This is where you should pay attention. You can learn some valuable lessons about yourself and how to improve your writing for future works. If you make one mistake over and over and over again, you just learned something about yourself. Take the time to digest what the editor is saying and don't panic when you get that feedback. It's always important to try to improve your writing abilities in any way that you can, and getting the feedback from a professional editor is the perfect way to do that. All right, that's all I have for you guys today. Hope that was really helpful. Be sure to check out my book, The Elysian Prophecy, linked down below. It's going to debut sometime this winter. 2016. I'm really excited. Each writing video that I have, I always do a companion post on my website, so make sure you check that out below if you want to see all my crazy lists that I had today and it make more sense. Feel free to ask me any writing questions that you have below, and then let me know if you have any suggestions for my new videos. Bye guys!